Hi guys, so as you can see from the title of the video, it's just with a really broken heart. I need to let you know that Naomi died. She died a few weeks ago now in the hospice. After I did my last update, we ended up going into the hospice care, and even though we were going in, we very much were there to get her home better, and that's what we were told was going to happen. And then something else changed and happened and cut her life short, really. But one big thing is, I hope, as our community, I know you care a lot and have followed us and supported us, and we literally felt that support carried us through the last 2 years. And I want to let you know what happened really honestly, because I think that the other thing is, I hope this video's caught somebody at a time where we were at, that you've clicked on it and found it because you're about to go into end of life care yourself, or as a family. And we found it so scary. We were so worried, nervous, because there's just no information. And I was comparing it to myself about how I started this channel because of motherhood and bringing life into the world, and even though there's so much information about that, it's still super daunting and overwhelming. And then when it comes to death, there's literally no information, and you don't even know how it happens or how to do it properly if you have that opportunity. I also know this might be triggering for people who haven't had that opportunity, so this is just my story. I can't talk for my sister and I can't talk for the family, so it will be from my point of view, but obviously there's more people around. So Naomi was told back in January that the cancer had gone. It's bowel cancer. It was doing really, really well, and then it went into her lungs, and that's all we really knew. We didn't even really understand it, and they told us she just had weeks to live. And since then, when we got more information about what was going on in her lungs, I looked it up, and that was very true. It was an end-of-life symptom, basically. It wasn't a tumour, it was something with her lymphs, and she just couldn't breathe anymore fully. She'd really done well with preparing us all. She was just so kind, and the hardest times were at Christmas. She was so severely unwell, and we didn't really share the bulk of it because obviously you wouldn't, but she was pretty much showing end-of-life signs then. She was in bed most of the time, she couldn't eat, she was very shallow breath, she could get up for maybe an hour or two and that was it. And she came and sat on my bed, because we rented a house for Christmas, and she came and sat on my bed next to me, and I was just sat there meditating. She came in and sat next to me, and she just said, "I'm really sorry." She said, "I'm gonna die and I can't get through this." And I said to her, "You're not?" I said, "You're really not?" I said, "I can see another chapter." And I said, "And I can see a chapter where you don't have your hair, and it's going to be hard, but this isn't it. You are going to get through this." And then I just felt this huge, overwhelming love, like an energy, like a real felt the love. And some people would say, it's spirit, or it's angels, or it's God. I don't know what it was, but I felt it so presently, like love as a presence. And I just put my hand on her, and we were just sat there together. And then the whole of that Christmas, I literally just had my hands over her and was just saying, "Thank you for this healing. Thank you for the healing." And we just got her through it minute by minute, and she did pick up and carried on. But then she went into the ward, and they said, "You have to go into this chemo, but you really don't have long." And she was grateful for the chemo, and she literally was going in a wheelchair, so weak, getting through it. But what was happening was she wasn't getting those respite weeks, and she was on this 21-day cycle, and normally you'd have a few good days, and there were just not many coming. So you guys were all incredible, and something happened that doesn't happen in a lifetime, which was this raffle, and we raised that £78,000, and we could pay for the private immunotherapy. And that didn't just give us hope, it did, and it massively spurred her forward, but it did I think, work. Her cancer, when we went in into the hospice, they said it's not marching forward. It had pretty much sort of evened out. Some bits were worse, some bits were better. But it was, you know, she definitely had more time, and the immunotherapy was just starting to work. And I went down to see her, and we knew things were changing, like I said in my last video, and she said to my mum and dad, stop at the shop, because we were out in the car, and they went into, she said, can you run in and buy like an apple crumble or something? And they went in, and when they went in, she just said to me really quietly, she was in the front and I was in the back, and she said, what do you think about how ill I am? And I don't think I even answered. We just sort of sat there, and then we got back to the house, and she said to me, I'm not going to go and do chemo anymore. I can't do it, I'm not well enough. And I said, yeah, okay. And then we brought my mum and dad in and said, we've had this discussion, we've made that decision. And she said to my mum, what's going to happen? And my mum just said, well, you just get weak and you won't be able to eat, and they'll sedate you in the hospice. And, you know, and we were like, okay. And she was on this thing called Mission Stay Out of Hospice. She didn't want to go into the hospice. And I'd never met the hospice team, and this is a very positive. The one thing I want everyone to hear is, if you get offered to go into a hospice, if you don't feel ready because you think it's a place to go and die, go sooner. Like, run, because it is literally the piece of the cancer puzzle and the end of life puzzle that we had no concept of, because who does lean into knowing what a hospice is? But in the end, the hospice nurse rang me on the Thursday after I'd made that last update, and she said to me, I just need to chat about your sister. And I was like, okay. And I said, well, what about my sister? She's fine. And then she said, well, we need to know why she's dying. And I was like so shocked. It's such a confronting thing to say. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, well, she could be dying of cancer. She said, but it could be something medically reversible. And I was like, what? Well, we've never been told that. That wasn't sort of on our radar, that that's what we could go into the hospice for, like a reset. And so I rang my sister. She was like, oh, I didn't really think that either. So the next day, they ended up ringing all of a sudden saying there's a bed. So Henrik took the day off work and drove me down, and I got there just as she was talking to the girls. And I won't say all that personal stuff for the girls, but she spoke so beautifully. And then they said that I could stay there with her. And there was a little bit of like, not much, a little bit of commenting about, you know, why are you there? Why is it just you in the hospice? Because I was so lucky. Will carry that hospice time in my heart forever and ever, because what happened was they told her, we had this massive shock. The doctor came in, big team of doctors. This was like 5:30 on the Friday, and they said, we got your scan results. She'd had a scan like 2 or 3 weeks before, and we hadn't even had the results. And they said, this scan shows you've got a lung clot. That's why she deteriorated so fast. And we can give you treatment for that. And you've also got a chest infection, and we can give you treatment for that. And the cancer's sort of going along, but it's not what's causing this. And we were like, wow, like couldn't believe it really. Because we'd never been told, not one person had said to us, no one had come back to us about the scan. Oncology hadn't even picked up the phone, you know, and they were just talking like normal, like, oh, well. And so she started the treatment straight away. I think it's like heparin, like a blood thinner. And they said, you know, you just rest now. And we got to just sit in this room together, pushed our beds together. They'd still be going home end of next week, much better, feeling much stronger, and to go into chemo again. We spoke to oncology, and the oncologist said, yeah, great, maybe that chemo you're on, maybe not. And she was like, no, I don't think so. And he was going to put her on a different one, which is called long surf or something, which is one where it's just oral and it doesn't fight the cancer, but it stabilizes you, so you get that end of life time. Fantastic. She was like, I'm really happy about that. She actually punched the air, and she was like, yes, my friend's on that, she's doing so well, and loads of people doing really well on this drug, and I've got the immunotherapy in my body, and it's just great news. And so we actually were in a position where we thought she was going home. So I got to stay in the hospice, because Lee was like, we'd had this big tough time challenge where my sister at one point just said to me, she's like, I'm dying. And she said, and it's all right for you guys, because you're okay as long as I'm alive, and I'm sitting here and I'm alive. She said, but for me, I don't have a life. She's like, I'm literally just slumped in my bed trying to breathe, and that's not, I don't want to do it. And it was really, really hard, and we were just crying, and she was screaming and I was screaming, and we were going crazy in this car journey. So dangerous. So I said to her, okay, I think anyone who's alive needs a purpose. And we got really into this idea, and we did this angel card reading because that's what we like now. And it was beautiful, and angel cards aren't like woo-woo, it's not like for us anyway, but it gives you like intuitive guidance basically. Then you get to discuss like, what is my, you know, it's like your purpose, your happy, you know, whatever. So we were doing that with a guide, and we loved it. And she decided that all she wanted was her garden to be done, so she could sit out in her garden and watch her children play for her last few weeks. She's like, I've maybe got like 6 weekends left on earth, and that's so awful to think about, and that's all I want to do with those weeks. And we were like, yeah. So Lee and his brothers were literally round the clock making this garden. My mum and dad, my sister found them a house. She's so funny. She found this house, got it, rented it for my parents, was organising the removals on her phone at the hospice, get them there so that my mum could be there to do the care and do the girls, because they couldn't do the school run at the end, and that really broke her heart. And remember, now when I don't want to get out of bed, because I don't want to get out of bed, I wake up every morning and think, I'm not getting out of bed, I don't want this life of grief, I don't want it, I don't want to do that. And then I remember like her saying, like, when I couldn't even do the school run, I just thought, what is this going to be? And I thought, I'm just have to do the school run. So I get up every morning, do the school run, and it's almost like with her pushing me out the door. And yeah, so that was all happening. So they were all busy preparing for her to come home. So I got this joyous time where we thought she had more time, where we just laid in bed, we watched interior shows, we watched the Whitney movie, they made us afternoon tea in the garden, they brought us these big delicious meals to the room, or we could go to the cafe. They made us this roast one day, and we literally like pushed our little hospital tables together opposite each other so that we were having like a little dinner, and we put this Ibiza tunes on. The doctor came in and was like, oh, I'll come back another time. And she was on oxygen the whole time. And then it started to just get very scary, where about once a day she would really lose her breath, which was happening at home, but it was happening in the hospice. And during those periods, she would be very, she'd say, she'd just say, I can't get my breath. And she would stay very, very calm, and I would keep her calm, press the red bell, and they would come in and they could do morphine, nebulizers, and bring her oxygen levels back up. And at points she'd be like, one time her oxygen went really low and she was quite hallucinating, and she went to me, oh, you've got a tattoo, when did you get that? And I was like, what do you mean, this is our tattoo? And she was like, oh, and she looked a bit like confused and a bit embarrassed. She was like, oh. You could see she was processing, like things are kind of slipping. And we were so funny, because I remember saying to my friend about it, and I said, well, we used to say to each other, oh, but it's only once a day. And we were like, she was like, yeah, I know, it's only once a day. I was like, yeah, only once a day. Like only once a day that you nearly die. I don't know why we thought that was such a good thing. but you just get into such a strange thing. And she was just so endlessly herself, and endlessly kind and funny, and she made so many friends in the hospice. All the nurses, she was just like BFFs straight away, like knew all their lives. They were showing her the pictures of their houses, she was picking chairs, like honestly, like just totally herself. And I was just so proud. I was literally like, every time somebody came in, and the hospice is so good, like they come in, they just look at her, they talk to her, they don't see you as a sick person, and that was their training, and it's so helpful. And then things took a really big change. We'd actually gone out of the hospice for the day. She'd had her immunotherapy at home, one of her treatments that we were paying for, and we snuck out and got our nails done, and I've recreated hers. And we got a frappuccino, and she was really unwell, but that was a good day. She was very, very chatty. We got back to the hospice, and my friend has sent us this little afternoon tea kit, which was a lovely thing to send rather than flowers, because the smell of flowers is making her lungs hurt. So we'll have those, we'll watch a show. And then the doctors came in, and they were like, we're really, really sorry, you've got an infection. It wasn't an infection from the hospice, it was her port had got infected, which is something that goes inside your skin, so you can have the chemo through it, and it goes into your arteries, into your heart, so it's a really dangerous infection. And they said, we're going to have to transfer you to hospital because we can't treat it here. And hospital, after that, we were just crying, and she was like, I'm so angry, but we really kept it together, and we went off there, and our hearts were just broken, and it was so awful in there. And she just said to me, she had the port removed in this emergency surgery, And then I slept on the floor, and some of her photos, I've got her phone, and I love having her phone, but obviously it's Lee's, but she's got photos of me sleeping next to her, and that she must have taken them in the middle of the night and stuff. And then I got photos of me, I was rubbing her feet, and I'm really smiling, and I don't know if we were laughing and chatting and what we were doing, but I'm really smiling, and I'm rubbing her feet, and she took a picture. And she just said to me, after this, when I go back to the hospice, she said, I'm not going to go home, and it's not going to be the same. And it wasn't. And quite quickly after that, it was very quick. They sort of had to just gradually increase the morphine and things because her breath was getting harder. And then, so she was very, very happy. I know I keep saying that, but she was even saying very happy. And I was just saying to her all the time, she was kind of out of it, drifting in and out. And I was saying to her, I know you're sad for all of us, but please be so proud of yourself. Be so proud of your life. You've got an amazing life. You have completed so much. You know, you've got your husband, you've got your 2 little girls, which is always what she wanted, 2 little sisters like us. And I said, you've had an amazing career. And she was so proud of the podcast. She was so proud of saving lives with her awareness of cancer. And I said, you know, you can complete your life so happy and take that with you, because yeah, we'll be sad forever, but you can be so proud of yourself. And I didn't know if it was going in, and then the doctors came in, were chatting to her, and she was just saying funny things actually, like that didn't really make sense to the answers, but she was smiling. And then they said, is there anything you want to say? And she said, I'm just so proud of myself. And I was so pleased. I'll hang on to that forever, because it went in what I was saying. And then I had to leave because I had to take my kids home because they were down and with me, because I just couldn't do it by myself anymore, because I'd been there like 3 weeks. I think I'd had like 3 nights at home. And I said to the nurse, what do? I said, what's going to happen? I feel like I've got 2 hours left with my sister. I'm like, how do you do that? Like, honestly, like, you know how much I love her. Like, how much I love her is insane. It's like huge. We're just so bonded, and she's my sister. Like, you know, it's such a different relationship, because now it's like my whole childhood is just my childhood. And then I think of things and I'm like, oh, there'll be never anyone to talk about that with again, and in the same way. And all of that, it's all very different. Like, you know, if I ever get cancer, I won't have my sister with me, you know, and all of it is all alone now. And I've got 2 little girls, you know, it's all just so much. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't say goodbye to my sister. And I said, what's going to happen? And she said, well, when she gets worse, she'll be sedated and you'll have time to come back and sit with her. Okay, so I left and I said goodbye. I said, I'm leaving, and I said some nice things. And then I just said to her, I'm going now. I'll come back on Friday and we'll drink our kombucha and we'll watch maths, because we had 2 set episodes left. She said, heavenly. And I said, I love you. And she said, I love you. And so I left. And then at midnight that night, she just took the turn, and my mum was with her, and then my dad and Lee. I didn't make it back. And I got there and she died. And I just walked in and I said, if they're waiting for me, she's gone before I get there, because she was going when I was driving down. And there was no one at the door, and I was like, right. And I walked in the door and I was signing in with my sister's friend Genevieve, and then 2 of the doctors came out and they said, Sarah Jane, can you come in? And Jen, can you wait there? And I was like, oh God, I missed it. And I went in, and they said, your parents were in this room, and I just didn't want to go in there. I just wanted to go down the corridor. So like, I don't want to walk down this corridor. And I went in and she was there with Lee. And I got to spend some time with her. And I said some nice things to her, and then I put these photos on her wall in the hospice. She wanted like a gallery wall of pre-cancer. So we all took down the ones with us in it and wrote messages and left them with her, which I'm so pleased we did. Please do that, because you don't think about then that the body goes off to different places, not lots of places to the funeral directors, but I was so pleased she had photos of her. Well, I don't want them to look at her body, I wanted them to look at her photos, and that you're so loved. I'm so present, you know? So we wrote messages and left them, and I had to go with Lee to tell the girls, and they came out of school. Awful. And yeah. But I waffled. She was happy, and she said, I'm happy and I'm in control, and she had not one word of hate, not one word of regret, not one word of why me, not one word of I'm in pain, not one give me more time. She was just happy. And she was saying things like, I can't wait to go there, and you and me will go, and then we'll sit there and we'll go over here, and I love this pink colour on the wall. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, no, I'm talking rubbish. It's the drugs. And I was like, I don't care. Just love it. I said, you sound like you're living your best Pinterest life. And she said, that's exactly what it's like. And then I've had loads of signs that she's all around me. I don't believe she's with me. I hope she's not. She's like, I do not want to be hovering over watching everything that's going on. That would really annoy me. I think she's gone. I think she completed, and I think she's gone. But I think that when we need her, she'll come. And I've already had signs of that. But now it's just to say that, you know, as scary as death is, you walk it with how you lived your life. So you don't change. And the person who loves you, they won't see you as any different. Like when I picture it as if we were in there having like happy times. Like she looked herself and normal, and obviously she was so poorly. Henrik came in once, he was like, oh my goodness, like he hadn't seen her for a while, and he was like, well, we've changed. And I was like, no, she looks lovely to me. And she just was, her energy was just so huge, and everyone was just so drawn to her, and she was just treated as herself. And that's what the hospice does. And I would just urge anyone, if you can get there, let's all go. Go. If you're ever in the position of thinking, is it too much? Is it too scary? Or is it just an awful place to be? It's not. It's just where you need to be. And even Nay said right at the end, some of the words she said, I didn't know this was piece of it. And I was like, yeah. And she also said to me, you know, everyone needs a purpose. And I said, yeah. Maybe she was saying that because she felt she fulfilled it. I don't know. But I'm just going through the grief process now, and thank you for listening. I hope it's reached somebody who just wants to hear a story of it, because sometimes you just need a story just to know one way it can go. And Nay would have been very proud of herself, and she would have been proud that I'm telling you, and that I'm completing her story about that part of her life, but obviously not completing life with her, because she will always be living with me, on with me, and I will always talk about her forevermore. Right, I'm gonna go. Thank you. I'm going to talk about grief a bit, so if you're grieving, or if you've got any questions, if you're a cancer patient, I will answer them at some point, probably not immediately, but thank you from the bottom of both our hearts for all the support you've given both of us, and I'll continue to share her life through mine. Bye guys.